Captain Marcus Reed stared at the strange readings on his screen and felt his stomach drop. The exploration ship Terra's Pride had been flying through empty space for 3 weeks when the signal appeared. It was weak and broken, but clearly not human. Lisa, can you clean this up? Marcus asked his communication officer. Lisa Park bent over her console and her fingers moved quickly across the controls. Static filled the bridge until suddenly a voice came through. The voice was high and musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. But there was terror in those sounds that made everyone on the bridge freeze. Even without understanding the words, they could hear pure fear. Captain, I'm getting some kind of video feed, Lisa said. Her face was pale as she worked. It's coming through now. The main screen flickered and showed something that made Marcus's blood run cold. The beings on screen looked like they were made of living crystal. Their bodies were translucent and beautiful, with light flowing through them like water. But they were running behind them came massive shapes in dark armor. The attackers were 3 times larger than the crystal beings and moved with mechanical precision. Their weapons fired bright beams that turned the fleeing crystal people into nothing but scattered light. My God, whispered Tom Bradley, the chief engineer. They're being hunted. The video showed crystal cities burning. Beautiful spires that had stood for who knows how long were crashing down. The crystal beings tried to hide, but the armored attackers found them everywhere. Children, elders, families, none were spared. Lisa worked frantically to decode more of the signal. Captain, I'm getting coordinates. They're broadcasting their location. Where? Marcus asked. 3 days at maximum burn. The signal is coming from a star system called Velfin. Marcus studied the readings. The signal was getting weaker by the minute. Soon it would fade completely and they would lose any chance of helping these people. But one exploration ship against what looked like an entire fleet was suicide. Tom, what's our combat capability? Marcus asked. Tom shook his head. We've got basic shields and 2 plasma cannons. We're a science vessel, not a warship. Whatever those things are, they'll tear us apart. The bridge fell silent except for the dying alien transmission. Marcus watched as more crystal beings died on screen. These weren't soldiers or warriors. They were innocent people being slaughtered for no reason he could understand. Captain, said Lisa quietly, the transmission is almost gone. If we're going to help them, we need to decide now. Marcus knew what he had to do. It went against every regulation and common sense, but he couldn't watch genocide and do nothing. Set course for the Velfin system. Maximum burn. Sir, Tom protested, we'll be flying into a massacre. That's not a rescue mission, it's suicide. Maybe, Marcus said. But we're not going alone. Lisa, prepare a message burst to Earth Fleet. Command, include everything we've recorded. Tell them we need backup and we need it fast. Lisa nodded and began encoding the message. On the main screen, the crystal beings' transmission showed their beautiful world burning. Cities that had taken centuries to grow were being destroyed in minutes. The attackers moved through them like a plague. Message ready to transmit, Captain. Lisa reported, send it. And pray someone at Fleet Command has the authority to help the message shot away at faster than light speed toward Earth. It would take time to reach home and more time for any help to arrive. Marcus hoped these crystal people could hold out that long as Terra's Pride jumped to faster than light travel. The alien transmission finally died completely. The bridge was left in an eerie silence that seemed to echo with the screams they had just witnessed. 3 hours into their journey, Lisa looked up from her console with worry on her face. Captain, I'm detecting ships behind us. How many? Marcus asked. At least 5, large ones. And they're gaining on us. Tom checked his readings and cursed. They're the same design as the attackers in the transmission? Somehow they tracked our communications. Marcus felt ice in his veins. The hunters had found them. Terra's Pride was fast, but not faster than military vessels designed for war. They had maybe 6 hours before those ships caught up. Can we lose them? Marcus asked. Not in open space, Tom replied. Our only chance is to reach the Velfin system first and hope there's somewhere to hide. Or hope Fleet Command got our message and sent help, Lisa added. Marcus nodded, but he knew the odds. Even if Earth had received their message immediately, it would take time to gather ships and more time to reach them. They were on their own. The next few hours passed like a nightmare. The enemy ships kept gaining ground while Tara's pride pushed her engines beyond safe limits. Tom worked miracles to keep them running while Lisa monitored the pursuit. "They're almost in weapons range," Lisa reported. 10 minutes, maybe less. Marcus gripped his command chair. In 10 minutes, his crew of 37 would be dead or captured. The thought of ending up like those crystal beings made him sick. "Wait!" Tom called out. "I'm reading massive energy signatures ahead. Multiple ships dropping out of faster than light travel." The main screen lit up with new contacts. Marcus counted. Then quickly and felt hope surge through him. 3 destroyers, a heavy cruiser, and something much larger. Fleet Command came through, Lisa said with relief in her voice. The largest ship identified itself as the indomitable flagship of the Rapid Response Fleet. Admiral Diana Walsh appeared on screen, and Marcus had never been happier to see anyone in his life. "Captain Reed, you've led us quite a chase. Report your status. 5 enemy vessels in pursuit, Admiral. The crystal beings we told you about are under attack. We have maybe hours before their civilization is wiped out completely." Admiral Walsh nodded grimly. "We'll handle your pursuit. You continue to the Velthan system and gather intelligence. We'll be right behind you." Marcus watched as the human fleet turned to engage their pursuers. Plasma fire lit up space as the two forces met. Tara's pride continued toward the Velthan system while the battle raged behind them 2 hours later. They dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of the Velthan system. What they saw made Marcus wish they had arrived sooner. The crystal world hung in space like a dying jewel. Its surface was scarred with blast craters, and it's beautiful. Crystal cities were mostly ruins. Massive alien ships orbited the planet like mechanical vultures waiting for death. "Lisa, are you picking up any transmissions from the surface?" Marcus asked. She worked her controls and shook her head. "Nothing, Captain. Either they're all dead or too afraid to broadcast." Tom studied the enemy fleet. "I count 20 ships, Captain. Some of them are bigger than anything in our fleet. If the crystal people are still alive down there, they won't be for long." Marcus made another decision that probably broke every rule in the book. "Take us closer. Use the asteroid field for cover. We need to know if anyone is still alive." Tara's pride moved carefully through the rocky debris that surrounded the planet. The enemy ships didn't notice one small vessel hiding among the asteroids. As they got closer, Marcus could see the devastation more clearly. The crystal cities that had sparkled like diamonds in the alien transmission were now broken ruins. Smoke rose from a dozen impact sites where orbital weapons had struck. But as they watched, Lisa suddenly straightened. "Captain, I'm picking up very weak signals from the surface. Short bursts. It looks like a code. Can you decode it? It's basic mathematics. They're telling us where survivors are hiding." Marcus felt a mix of relief and dread. People were still alive, but for how long? The enemy fleet was clearly preparing for something big. Their ships were moving into bombardment formation. "Time to finish this," he muttered. "Lisa, signal the fleet. Tell them we found survivors. But they need to hurry. I don't think these people have much time left." Admiral Diana Walsh sat in her command chair aboard the Indomitable and watched the alien footage for the 10th time. Each viewing made her more angry and more determined to help these crystal beings called the Velthanith. Video showed creatures of impossible beauty being hunted through their own cities. Their translucent bodies glowed with inner light that dimmed as they died. Their attackers were massive brutes in black armor who killed without mercy or reason. "Admiral," said intelligence Officer James Murphy as he approached her chair, "I've finished analyzing the enemy vessels from Captain Reed's data. The news isn't good." Diana turned to face him. Murphy had been studying alien threats for 15 years, and she had never seen him look this worried. "Tell me," she said. "They're called the Kethver Empire. They've been conquering star systems for over 300 years. According to our database, they've never been defeated in battle. Not once." Diana felt her stomach tighten. "What makes them so dangerous?" "Superior technology for starters. Their shields are 50% stronger than ours and their weapons cut through our armor like it's paper. But that's not the worst part. Go on. They outnumber us 50-1, Admiral. Even if we could match them ship for ship, they have hundreds of vessels in this sector alone. Diana looked at the tactical display showing their small fleet. 3 destroyers, 1 heavy cruiser, and her flagship. Against hundreds of enemy ships? They didn't stand a chance in a straight fight. There's something else, Murphy continued. The Kethver don't just conquer worlds, they harvest them. They take everything of value and leave nothing behind but empty rock. What do you mean by harvest? Murphy pulled up more data on his tablet. They strip mine entire planets. They take all natural resources, all technology, and all living beings. The populations are either enslaved or killed. Diana watched the alien footage again and felt sick. These beautiful crystal people were facing complete extinction, and there was almost nothing she could do to stop it. Dr. Elena Rodriguez approached from the science station. As Earth's leading expert on alien biology, she had been studying the Velthani from the video footage. Admiral, I've completed my analysis of the Velthani physiology. They're unlike anything we've ever encountered. How so, Doctor? They're incredibly fragile by our standards. Hollow bones, delicate organ systems, very low muscle density. They evolved on a low-gravity world with no large predators. They've never had to fight for survival. Diana studied the gentle beings on screen. They moved with grace and beauty, but she could see what Elena meant. They looked like they would break if touched too roughly. That explains why they can't fight. Back against the Kethver, Diana said. Exactly. They're a peaceful species that developed art and science instead of weapons. They probably never even imagined that beings like the Kethver existed. The bridge communications console chimed, and Lieutenant Kim Davis looked up from her station. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Captain Reed. Put it through, Marcus. Reed's worried face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, the bridge of Terra's Pride looked tense. Admiral, the situation here is worse than we thought. The Kethver have 20 ships in orbit, and they're preparing for final bombardment. I estimate the Velthani have hours at most. Any sign of survivors? Yes, ma'am. We're detecting weak signals from underground shelters. There are still people alive, but not for long. Diana made her decision. Captain, maintain your position and keep monitoring. We're jumping to your location immediately. Admiral, Murphy interrupted. We're still outnumbered 20-5. Those aren't good odds. No, they're not. But we can't let an entire species die while we wait for reinforcements. That might never come. Diana turned to her navigation officer. Commander Torres, plot a jump to the Velthan system. All ships prepare for immediate departure. The fleet preparation was organized chaos. Engineering teams pushed reactors to maximum output, while weapons officers armed every missile and charged every plasma cannon. Marines checked their equipment and prepared for possible boarding actions. Commander Jake Harrison joined Diana on the bridge. As leader of the fleet's special operations team, he would be crucial in any ground assault. Admiral, I've been studying the enemy ship designs. They're built for overwhelming firepower, but they might have weaknesses, such as their ships are huge and powerful, but they're not very maneuverable. If we can get close and use hit-and-run tactics, we might have a chance. Diana nodded. Prepare your teams for possible infiltration missions. If we can't defeat them in open battle, we'll have to get creative. Dr. Rodriguez approached with more data. Admiral, I've been analyzing the energy signatures from the Kethver weapons. I think I found something interesting. What is it? Doctor, their technology seems to be based on harvested biological components. The energy patterns match organic neural networks rather than pure mechanical systems. What does that mean for us? It means their weapons and shields might be vulnerable to certain types of electromagnetic interference. If we can generate the right frequency, we might be able to disrupt their systems. Diana felt a spark of hope. How long would you need to develop such a weapon? Give me 6 hours and I can modify our communications array to generate the right frequency. Do it. We need every advantage we can get. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel with Elena working frantically in the engineering sections. The journey to the Velthan system would take 4 hours. giving her time to complete her modifications. During the trip, Diana called a meeting of all senior officers. The briefing room was crowded as ship captains and department heads gathered around the tactical display. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to face an enemy that has never been defeated. They're stronger, more numerous, and more experienced than we are. She paused and looked at each face around the table. These were good people who had signed up to explore the galaxy, not fight impossible battles. However, we have something they don't. We have a reason to fight that goes beyond conquest or personal gain. We're fighting for people who can't fight for themselves, Captain Melissa Torres of the destroyer Defiant spoke up. Admiral, what's our primary objective? Save as many Velthani as possible and drive off the Kethver fleet. In that order, and if we can't drive them off, Diana's voice was steel, then we make sure they remember that humanity doesn't abandon its friends. The meeting broke up as officers returned to their ships to prepare their crews. Diana remained in the briefing room studying the tactical data and trying to find a way to win an impossible battle 2 hours before they reached the Velthan system. Elena reported success with her electromagnetic weapon. The communications array had been modified to generate pulses that should disrupt Kethver biotechnology. It's untested, Admiral, but the theory is sound. We'll test it in combat, Doctor. We don't have time for anything else. 1 hour out, long-range sensors detected. The Kethver fleet in orbit around the Velthan homeworld. 20 massive ships arranged in bombardment formation with their weapons aimed at the planet. They're getting ready to finish the job, Murphy observed. Diana watched the sensor readings and felt time running out. Somewhere on that crystal world, innocent people were hiding in underground shelters and praying for rescue that might never come. All ships. This is Admiral Walsh. In 30 minutes, we will engage a superior enemy force to protect a species that cannot protect itself. This is what we signed up for when we joined the fleet. This is our moment to prove that humanity stands for something greater than ourselves. She paused and looked around her bridge at the dedicated crew who would follow her into almost certain death. Prepare for battle. Today we show the galaxy what humans do when innocent people need help. The fleet dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of the Velthan system and immediately detected something that made Diana's blood freeze. Long-range sensors were showing massive energy signatures approaching from the outer system. Admiral Torres called from the sensor station. Multiple contacts incoming. Large ships, definitely Kethver design. How many? 37 and counting. Including something really big. The computer is having trouble getting an accurate reading on it. Diana stared at the display as more enemy ships appeared. What had been a desperate battle against 20 ships was now completely hopeless against 60 or more, ma'am, Torres continued. The largest ship is broadcasting an identification signal. It's calling itself the Soul Render. Murphy looked like he was going to be sick. Admiral, that's the flagship of Warlord Thakmar. He's the most successful Kethver commander in their history. 300 years of conquest, and he's never lost a single battle. Diana watched as the enemy reinforcements moved to surround her small fleet. In a few minutes, the most feared warrior in the galaxy would have them trapped with no hope of escape but somewhere below on that dying world. Crystal beings were still sending weak signals asking for help. Diana had come too far to give up now. All ships, attack formation. We're going in. Commander Jake Harrison watched the Velthan homeworld grow larger on his screen and felt his heart break. The crystal cities that had sparkled like jewels in the distress transmission were now smoking ruins. Orbital bombardment had left massive craters where beautiful spires once reached toward the sky. The scout ship Shadow Runner moved silently through the asteroid field while Jake's team prepared for their mission. Anna Foster checked her sniper rifle for the 3rd time while Rick Stone organized his demolition charges. Both were among the best special operations soldiers in the human fleet. Jake, I'm reading multiple prison complexes on the largest moon, reported pilot Sarah Chun from the cockpit. The energy signatures match what we saw in the enemy fleet data. Jake studied the tactical display. The moon showed signs of recent construction with several large facilities surrounded by energy barriers. If the Velthani survivors were anywhere, they would be there. Take us in quiet. Sarah, we need to see what we're dealing with before the fleet engages. Shadow. Runner slipped between the rocky debris that orbited the Velthan homeworld. The larger moon loomed ahead with its ugly new structures standing out against the natural landscape like scars as they approached. Anna positioned herself at the observation port with her enhanced scope. What she saw made her curse softly. Jake, you need to see this. Jake took the scope and looked down at the nearest prison complex. What he saw was worse than anything he had imagined. The Velthani were kept in transparent containers barely large, enough for their crystalline bodies. Tubes and wires were attached to them at various points, drawing off the natural light that flowed through their translucent forms. The beautiful glow that made them so magnificent was being harvested like a resource. My God, Jake whispered. They're farming them, but that wasn't the worst part. The containers were arranged in rows like crops with Kethver guards moving between them. The crystal beings inside were clearly alive, but their light was dim and flickering. They were being slowly drained of whatever made them unique. There must be thousands of them, Anna said. And look at the construction. This isn't temporary. They're planning to keep this operation running for years. Rick Stone studied the facility's defenses through his own scope. Heavy shield generators, automated weapon systems, and at least 50 guards. Getting in won't be easy. Getting out alive will be harder, Sarah added from the pilot seat. Jake made his decision. We're going down. The fleet needs to know what we're facing, and those people need help. Shadow Runner landed in a crater several kilometers from the nearest facility. Jake's team moved out on foot, using natural cover to approach the prison complex. The low gravity made movement easier but also more dangerous if they were spotted. Anna found a good observation position on a ridge overlooking the facility. Through her scope, she could see the full horror of what the Kethver were doing. The containers are connected to some kind of central processing unit, she reported quietly into her radio. The light they're harvesting is being refined and stored in crystalline matrices. For what purpose? Jake asked. Unknown, but whatever it is, they consider it valuable enough to keep an entire species alive to produce it. Rick studied the facilities. Power systems. I count 6 shield generators and a central command post. If we can take out the command post, the whole defensive grid should collapse. Jake weighed their options. They were only 4 people against a heavily defended position, with 50 guards. But intelligence gathered here could save the entire Velthani species. We go in quiet. Anna, you take overwatch position here. Sarah, bring the ship to the extraction point. Rick and I will infiltrate the command post. Jake, Anna said quietly. There's something else you should see. She handed him the scope and pointed to a section of the facility he hadn't noticed before. In a separate area, Kethver technicians were working on something that made Jake's blood run cold. They were experimenting on live Velthani, testing different extraction methods and recording the results. The crystal beings in the test area were clearly in agony, their light flickering weakly as the aliens tried different approaches. We're not just gathering intelligence anymore, Jake said grimly. We're conducting a rescue mission. The team moved closer to the facility under cover of the moon's rocky terrain. The Kethver guards were large and intimidating in their black armor, but they seemed complacent. They had never faced human infiltration. Techniques. Jake and Rick reached the outer perimeter and began their approach to the command post. The building was heavily armored, but not designed to stop human special operations tactics. Rick placed shaped charges on the building's support pillars, while Jake hacked into their communication system. What he found in their transmissions made everything worse. Anna, the Kethver are preparing to harvest every remaining Velthani on the planet. They're moving the population here for mass processing. How long do we have? Transport ships are already loading prisoners. Maybe 6 hours before they're all dead. Rick finished placing his charges and signaled ready. Jake made the hardest decision of his military career. Anna, tell the fleet to attack immediately. We'll create as much chaos as possible from inside. Jake, that's suicide. You won't be able to reach the extraction point. Maybe not, but if we can shut down their defenses, the fleet might have a chance. Before Anna could argue, Jake triggered Rick's charges. The command post exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the moon's surface. Immediately, alarms began wailing throughout the facility. The shield generators flickered and died as their control systems were destroyed. Automated weapons turned randomly as their targeting computers lost coordination. The entire defensive grid collapsed into chaos. Kethver guards poured out of their barracks, but they had no idea where the attack was coming from. Jake and Rick used the confusion to move deeper into the facility toward the prisoner-holding areas. "Sarah, bring the ship in now," Jake called over his radio. "We're going to need immediate extraction." "On my way, Jake." Anna's providing cover. Fire from the ridge. Jake reached the first row of prisoner containers and began looking for release mechanisms. The Velthani inside were barely conscious, but their eyes tracked his movement with desperate hope. "Rick, can you figure out how to open these things?" "Working on it. The control systems are biomechanical." "I need a few minutes." They didn't have a few minutes. Kethver guards were converging on their position, and Jake could hear their heavy footsteps echoing through the facility corridors. Anna's voice crackled over the radio. "Jake, you've got 20 hostiles approaching from the east corridor." "I can slow them down, but not stop them." Her sniper rifle began firing from the ridge, and Jake heard alien shouts of pain and confusion. Anna was buying them time, but at great personal risk. Rick suddenly shouted in triumph. "Got it. The containers are opening." The first row of prison cells released their locks, and the Velthani inside began to stir. Their light was dim but growing, brighter as they realized they were being rescued. "There are thousands more," Rick said. "We need to get to the central control room." Jake looked at the massive facility stretching in all directions. Even if they could free all the prisoners, they had no way to evacuate them. Shadowrunner could carry maybe 20 beings, not thousands. "New plan," Jake said. "We get as many as we can to the ship. The fleet will have to handle the rest." Sarah brought Shadowrunner down in the facility's courtyard with weapons blazing. Her ship's plasma cannons cut through Kethver guards while Jake and Rick began loading the weakest Velthani prisoners. The crystal beings were even more fragile than the intelligence reports had suggested. They weighed almost nothing, and their bodies felt like they might shatter at any moment. "Careful with them," Jake called to his team. "They're more delicate than glass." Anna's covering fire was becoming more sporadic as Kethver reinforcements surrounded her position. Jake knew they had to leave soon or they would all be captured. "Anna, fall back to the ship. We're lifting off." "In 60 seconds. Negative, Jake. I've got 50 hostiles between me and you. I'll hold them here and catch the next ride." Jake knew there wouldn't be a next ride. Anna was sacrificing herself to buy them time to escape with the rescued prisoner Shadow. Runner lifted off with 12 Velthani refugees aboard. As they climbed toward space, Jake watched the facility grow smaller below them. Thousands of prisoners were still trapped down there with no hope of rescue. "Sarah, get us back to the fleet. They need to know what we found." "Already transmitting our data to Admiral Walsh. She's not going to like what she sees." Jake looked at the Velthani they had rescued. The crystal beings were huddled together in the ship's cargo bay, their light slowly growing stronger as they realized they were safe. One of them approached Jake and spoke in the musical language they had heard in the original distress call. Jake didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear in the being's glowing eyes. "Thank you," Jake said quietly. "We're going to try to save the others." The Velthani touched Jake's hand with its crystalline fingers, and somehow he could feel its gratitude. These people had never known violence or hatred until the Kethver came. Now they were learning that there were other kinds of strangers in the galaxy. As Shadowrunner approached the human fleet, Jake saw something that made his heart sink. Long-range sensors showed massive Kethver reinforcements approaching the system. "Sarah, how long until those new ships arrive?" 20 minutes, maybe less. "And Jake, the lead ship is huge. Bigger than anything in our database." Jake watched the tactical display as more enemy contacts appeared. What had been a desperate rescue mission was about to become a massacre. But down on that moon, thousands of innocent beings were still trapped, and waiting for help that might never come ******. Captain Melissa Torres gripped her command chair as the destroyer Defiant shook under enemy fire. The Kethver weapons tore through their shields like they were made of paper, sending sparks flying across the bridge. Hull breach on Deck 7, her engineering officer reported. We've lost primary power to the port weapon array around them. The human fleet was taking a beating. The Kethver ships were larger and more powerful than anything Earth had ever built. Their black hulls seemed to absorb plasma fire while their own weapons cut deep into human armor. Admiral Walsh is ordering all ships to focus fire on the nearest cruiser, Torres called to her weapons officer. Give them everything we've got. The combined fire from 3 human destroyers struck the Kethver vessel but barely scratched its hull. The alien ship returned fire and Torres watched in horror as the destroyer Valiant took a direct hit to her reactor core. The explosion lit up space. And when the glare faded, Valiant was gone. 37 crew members dead in an instant with nothing to show for their sacrifice. Captain. Her communications officer called out, "We're receiving a transmission from Shadowrunner. Commander Harrison has prisoners aboard and critical intelligence. Put him through." Jake Harrison's worried face appeared on the screen with 12 rescued Velthani visible behind him. The crystal beings looked weak but alive. "Captain, the Kethver aren't just killing the Velthani. They're harvesting them." Those prison facilities on the moon contain thousands of prisoners being used as living resources. Torres felt sick. What kind of resources? The light energy that flows through their bodies. The Kethver are draining it and using it to power their technology. That's why their shields are so strong. The tactical implications hit Torres immediately. You're saying their technology is powered by torture? Exactly. And there's more. My team found a weakness in their biomechanical systems. They're vulnerable to specific electromagnetic frequencies. Before Torres could respond, another massive explosion rocked her ship. A Kethver beam had punched through their forward armor, and her bridge was filling with smoke. "Captain," her tactical officer called out. "Long-range sensors are detecting the enemy reinforcement fleet. Estimated arrival in 15 minutes. Torres looked at the tactical display and felt her heart sink. 40 more enemy ships were approaching, including something the computer couldn't even classify, but Lieutenant Colonel Dave Morrison was leading a boarding party toward a damaged Kethver cruiser, and what happened next changed everything. Morrison's assault team reached the enemy ship and began cutting through the hull. The Kethver had never faced human boarding tactics, and their response was immediate and revealing. Instead of organizing a defense, the alien crew panicked. Their radio transmissions were full of what could only be described as terror. These massive warriors who had conquered hundreds of worlds were afraid. What are they so scared of? Torres wondered aloud. The answer came when Morrison's team reached the ship's command center. The Kethver commander was 3 meters tall and covered in thick armor, but when he saw Morrison, he actually backed away. Morrison was an average human soldier by Earth standards. Medium height, medium build, with the kind of face you might see in any crowd. But to the Kethver, he was something from their worst nightmares. "Captain," Morrison reported over the radio, "these aliens are terrified of us. I mean, genuinely afraid." The commander here is shaking. "Why would they be afraid of humans?" "I think we're about to find out." Morrison's team moved through the alien ship, and the Kethver crew fled before them. Warriors who had killed thousands of Velthani were running from a handful of humans like frightened children. Engineer Bobby Martinez was working with Dr. Rodriguez to implement their electromagnetic weapon when the revelation hit him. "Admiral," he called over the fleet communications, "I've been analyzing the Kethver bio readings. These aliens evolved on a garden world with almost no environmental threats. What does that mean?" "Bobby, it means they've never had to deal with predators or survival pressure. They're like the Velthani in that respect, just bigger and more technologically advanced." Admiral Walsh's voice came through clearly despite the battle raging around them. "Are you saying they don't understand violence? Not natural violence, no. They understand conquest and domination, but not the kind of instinctive survival. Fighting that humans learned over millions of years. The pieces were falling into place." The Kethver were bullies who had never met anything that could fight back effectively. They conquered peaceful species through superior technology, not superior tactics. Admiral, Morrison reported from inside the enemy ship. I've reached their data core. You're not going to believe what I'm finding. Report. The Kethver classify humans as a Class 7 Deathworld species. According to their files, Deathworld species are considered mythical. They didn't believe we actually existed. Torres felt a chill run down her spine. What's a Deathworld species? Species that evolved on planets with extreme environmental pressures. High gravity, dangerous predators, climate extremes, natural disasters. The kind of worlds that produce beings capable of surviving anything. The irony was overwhelming. Humans had always thought of Earth as a pleasant world suitable for life. But compared to the peaceful garden worlds where most alien species evolved, Earth was a nightmare planet that produced nightmare creatures. Morrison, what else are you finding? The Kethver have encountered 3 Deathworld species in their history. All 3 times, they retreated rather than fight. We're the 4th, and they're absolutely terrified. Sergeant Nina Blackwood was leading her squad through the corridors of Morrison's captured ship when she encountered a group of Kethver warriors. What happened next became legend in the human fleet. The aliens were twice her size and heavily armed, but when they saw her approaching, they actually threw down their weapons and surrendered. These beings who had slaughtered countless innocents gave up without firing a shot. They keep making these whimpering sounds. Nina reported. I think they're trying to communicate, but they're too scared to make sense. Bobby Martinez finished his electromagnetic modifications and tested them on the captured ship. The results were immediate and devastating to Kethver technology. Their biomechanical systems began failing as the electromagnetic pulses disrupted their harvested energy sources. Shields flickered and died while weapons powered down completely. Admiral, it works, Bobby reported. Their technology can't handle the electromagnetic interference. All ships implement Martinez's modifications immediately. Focus the electromagnetic pulse on the largest enemy vessels. The tide of battle began to turn as human ships deployed their new weapon. Kethver vessels that had seemed invulnerable suddenly found their shields failing and their weapons going offline, but the enemy reinforcement fleet was still approaching, and their lead ship was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Admiral, Torres reported from her damaged destroyer. The enemy flagship is massive. Computer estimates it's 10 times larger than anything in our fleet. The ship that appeared on long-range sensors was more like a mobile space station than a vessel. Its hull was covered in weapon systems and launch bays for smaller ships. That's the Soul Render, Morrison reported from his captured ship. According to these files, it's commanded by Warlord Thakmar, the most successful Kethver commander in history. How successful? 300 years of conquest. Hundreds of species enslaved or destroyed. He's never lost a battle, Torres watched as the massive vessel approached with its escort fleet. Even with their new electromagnetic weapon, the humans were still outnumbered and outgunned, but something strange was happening on the enemy ships. Radio intercepts were full of panicked transmissions as Kethver crews learned they were fighting Deathworld species. Admiral Morrison reported, the crew of this ship is in complete panic. Half of them have locked themselves in their quarters and refuse to fight. What are they saying? That humans are impossible, that we fight in ways they can't predict or counter, that we're like nothing they've ever encountered. The psychological advantage was becoming clear. The Kethver had built their empire by conquering peaceful species who couldn't fight back effectively. They had no experience dealing with opponents who had evolved to survive and fight. Admiral, Torres called out urgently. The Soul Render is powering up some kind of massive weapon. Energy readings are off the charts on the main tactical display. The enemy flagship was gathering energy for what looked like a planet-killing weapon. The target was clearly the Velfen homeworld, where thousands of prisoners were still held. Time to target, 60 seconds. Admiral, whatever they're planning to do, it's going to be massive. Admiral Walsh made the hardest decision of her career. All ships, attack formation. We're taking down that flagship before it can fire. Admiral, that's suicide. Their shields are still at full strength, maybe, but we can't let them destroy an entire world. The human fleet turned toward the massive enemy vessel as its planet-killer weapon continued charging. Somewhere below on the crystal world, innocent beings were about to die unless someone could stop the most feared warrior in the galaxy. Torres looked at her crew and saw the determination in their faces. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were humans from a death world. "All right, people," she said quietly. "Let's show these aliens what monsters really look like." ****, Captain. Marcus Reed watched the massive enemy flagship charging its planet-killer weapon and made a decision that surprised everyone on his bridge. Terra's Pride was the smallest ship in the human fleet, but she was also the fastest. "Tom, give me everything the engines have," Marcus ordered. "Lisa, open a channel to Admiral Walsh." "Captain," Tom protested. "If you're thinking what I think, you're thinking it's complete suicide." "Maybe, but it's the only way to get through their shields." Admiral Walsh appeared on screen with the sounds of battle echoing behind her. "Captain Reed, return to safe distance immediately. This is a job for warships. With respect, Admiral, warships won't get through those shields. But a small ship moving at maximum velocity might punch through long enough to create a breach." Marcus could see the understanding dawn in the Admiral's eyes. He was volunteering for a ramming attack against the most powerful ship in the Kethver fleet. "Captain, that's a one-way trip." "Not necessarily. My crew can evacuate to escape pods just before impact. Someone needs to survive to tell Earth what happened here." Lisa looked up from her communications console. "Captain, the crew is refusing to evacuate." "We're staying with the ship." Marcus felt pride and terror in equal measure. His crew of 37 scientists and explorers had just volunteered to die for people they had never met. "Admiral, we're beginning our attack run. Tell Marine Colonel Anderson to be ready with boarding teams." Terra's Pride accelerated toward the Soul Render while the rest of the human fleet provided covering fire. The small exploration vessel dodged between enemy plasma beams like a metal comet racing toward destruction. 30 seconds to impact, Tom reported. "Shields are failing, but we're still on course." The Kethver flagship tried to target the approaching ship, but Terra's Pride was too small and moving too fast. Point defense weapons fired desperately, but couldn't track the racing vessel. 10 seconds. Tom called out, "It's been an honor serving with you all." Terra's Pride struck the Soul Render's shields at maximum velocity and punched through like a bullet through paper. The collision tore the exploration ship apart, but created a massive breach in the enemy's defenses. Marine Colonel Beth Anderson was ready with her assault teams. As soon as the shields flickered, her boarding craft shot through the gap and attached to the enemy hull. "Breach successful," Anderson reported. Beginning infiltration of enemy flagship inside the Soul Render. Beth's Marines encountered something they had never expected. The Kethver crew was in complete panic, and many had abandoned their posts entirely. Combat medic Frank Lopez found entire sections of the ship empty as the alien crew hid in what they thought were safe areas. Heavy weapons specialist Amy Turner advanced through corridors designed for beings twice her size. "Colonel, these aliens are terrified of us," Amy reported. "They're not even trying to fight back properly." "Stay focused, Marine. Find the weapon control center and shut down that planet killer." The human boarding teams moved through the massive ship like ghosts. Their tactics had been developed fighting on a death world where everything was trying to kill them. The Kethver had no defense against such evolved predators. Beth reached the ship's command center where Warlord Thakmer waited with his remaining officers. The alien commander was massive even by Kethver standards, covered in ornate armor that spoke of centuries of conquest. But when he saw Beth Anderson, fear flickered in his alien eyes. "Deathworlder," he spoke in accented but understandable human language. "Your species should not exist, yet here we are," Beth replied, raising her weapon. "Surrender now, and your crew lives." Thakmer looked at the small human female who had just boarded his flagship and seen through his defenses like they were nothing. For 300 years, he had conquered peaceful species who begged for mercy. This was different. This human wasn't begging or pleading. She was giving him orders. "You do not understand," Thakmer said. "I have never been defeated. I have conquered 1,000 worlds and enslaved 100 species. Then today you learned something. New, the planet killer weapon was still charging, and Beth needed to reach the control systems before it fired. But Thakmer stepped between her and the weapon controls. I will not be defeated by prey animals from an impossible world. What happened next became part of human military legend. Beth Anderson, a combat medic turned Marine from the farming colony of New Kansas, faced the most feared warrior in the galaxy. Thakmer was 3 meters tall and armed with weapons that could cut through starship armor. Beth was average height for a human and carried standard Marine equipment. The fight lasted 30 seconds. Beth used tactics learned from a lifetime on a world where everything was dangerous. She moved in ways the alien couldn't predict, struck at points his armor couldn't protect, and fought with the desperate creativity of a species that had climbed to the top of a hostile food chain when it was over. Warlord Thakmer lay unconscious on his own command deck while Beth calmly walked to the weapon controls. Planet killer weapon disarmed, she reported. Enemy flagship secured on the planet's surface. Dr. Michael Chang led rescue teams through the Crystal Cities looking for survivors. The Velthani who emerged from their hiding places stared in amazement at these strange aliens, who had come to help. The crystal beings had evolved on a peaceful world where conflict meant gentle disagreement about art or philosophy. They had never imagined that the galaxy contained beings capable of violence in defense of others, your people. One elderly Velthani said to Dr. Chang through a translation device, "They are warriors, but they heal our wounded. They destroy our enemies, but show us kindness." "What manner of beings are you?" "We're humans," Chang replied simply. "We come from a world that taught us to fight, but also taught us what's worth fighting for." The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun, with their flagship captured and their legendary commander defeated. The Kethva fleet retreated in complete disorder, but the victory came at a cost. Terra's pride was gone and 12 other ships had taken heavy damage. The human fleet had suffered over 200 casualties in the fight as rescue operations continued on the Velthan homeworld. Admiral Walsh received reports that changed everything. Admiral Intelligence Officer Murphy reported, "Long-range communications are detecting massive activity throughout this sector. Word of our victory is spreading." "What kind of activity?" "Distress calls, ma'am. Dozens of them. Species that have been under Kethver occupation for decades are sending requests for help." Diana looked at the tactical display showing their small, damaged fleet. They had barely survived one battle against impossible odds. "How many requests?" "Are we receiving 47 so far, with more coming in every hour?" "They're not just asking for military help, Admiral. They want us as allies." The implications were staggering. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not as conquerors but as protectors. Species that had never heard of Earth were asking these strange Deathworlders to help them. "Admiral," Murphy continued, "there's something else. The Velthani elders want to speak with you personally." The delegation that arrived at the Indomitable was led by an ancient Velthani whose crystal body glowed with soft wisdom. Through translators, he delivered a message that would be remembered for generations. "Admiral Walsh of the humans, we called into the darkness for heroes and you sent us monsters. We feared the monsters and discovered angels." Diana felt the weight of those words. Humanity had been shaped by a harsh world that taught them to fight and survive. But it had also taught them compassion for those who couldn't fight for themselves. "Elder, we're not angels. We're just people who believe that strength should protect the weak." "Then perhaps," the Velthani replied, "that is what angels truly are." 6 months later, Earth received a transmission that changed the course of human history. It was a formal request from the Galactic Council asking humanity to join as a protector species. The message was signed by 43 different alien races, each one speaking of the Deathworlders who had saved them from extinction. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not through conquest or technology, but through the simple act of helping strangers in need. Captain Marcus Reed survived the ramming attack, though his ship did not. He was found floating in an escape pod 3 hours after the battle. Asking about his crew and the Velthani survivors, he was offered command of a new exploration vessel. but he turned it down to help establish the Terran Rescue Service, an organization dedicated to helping species in crisis. When asked why he had volunteered for what seemed like a suicide mission, his answer became the motto of human space forces: because someone called for help, and we were close enough to answer. The galaxy was a dangerous place full of predators and prey, conquerors and victims. But now it also contained something new: beings from a death world, who had learned that the strongest predators protect rather than devour the weak. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars, and the stars would never be the same.